Yeah, another video. Sorry. It's really late. I really gotta quit doing this shit. I'm gonna have a long day, long tomorrow. So it's named Tranquil. I just couldn't resist. I really gotta do this. It's gonna be too much fun. So I'll make it a series of videos. So I'll just title this Something Insulting to Tranquil, Volume 1. And like I said, I'll be sure to just keep doing it, just to point out that his philosophers are simpletons. His philosophy is ignorant, thin, weak. It just relies on emotionalism, mush, nonsense. So anyway, this video, so he plays my quotes about, some of my quotes anyway, about the fact that it all can be cut down to a net equation. There's a certain amount of suffering going to be caused, a certain amount of harm that will exist, and that's, your life is going to be measured by how much of that you produce. Whether you experience it or you cause it to be experienced in somebody else, it will define the value of your existence. And it's always going to be reliable, and you can take it all the way through all this minutia. And the only trap is, again, relates to our own ego, our own desire, that perverts our judgment, perverts our establishment of value based on projections of value, based on illusions of value. So I could argue that when I die, let's say my body is stolen by Greatex, and he does things with the body, has evil, nasty sex, and rapes me thoroughly. I find that emotionally unpleasant to contemplate. That'd be a horrible thing. Emotionally, I find it a violation of me somehow. But in practical fact, I'm dead. You couldn't hurt me. There's no harm done. It is in fact nothing. It's a non-event beyond the fact that he's gratified. It really isn't an event. It has no significance beyond the fact that I emotionally don't like it. But it doesn't have any rational value. It doesn't have any, there's no value I could explain or articulate to exist. It's just something I personally don't like. My ego doesn't like it. It's like I lost something that I deserved. It's like I feel entitled somehow to something else. But it doesn't have any real meaning. It's just a projection of value that I have placed on my dead corpse, which is just emotionalism. So again, that's the monkey part of us. There's some things, there's some reactions we're going to have that we just can't get past. Some people can't deal with bugs. They see a bug and they react. They can't deal with the damn bug. Some people can't resist cuteness. Kitty, puppy, they go crazy. Little baby rat, not so crazy. Why? The same brains, right? What's the difference? No difference there. It's just not aesthetic. It's not emotionally compatible. So they have an emotional reaction that's a cheat of the reality, right? You could put three things in pens: pig, kitten, dog. And people will go to kitten and dog, and poor pig is going to be left out. Not because pig deserved to get left out, just because pig isn't aesthetically pleasing enough. And that's the truth of it. He's not compatible with our senses, our emotions, our taste. It's not our food preference, so to speak. Although he is our food preference. Ironic joke. Okay, so understand that's the premise here. So he's going to attempt to say there is no truth to this statement, that our life is what we cause to happen to ourselves and to the world. And he's going to try to say that there's something else that means something by creating a thought experiment that somehow demonstrates how there is some other crime besides these real crimes of sentient experience. So let's go through it now. I'll just point out where there is no thought experiment. If you don't, you have to be a little bit careful in how you describe the thought experiment. You can't leave some questions unanswered. You just can't. You have to make it so the questions are answered or in your statement, or else you're going to have to be willing to answer the questions. because I'm going to impose on you to answer some very specific questions about what is being traded. All right. A medical doctor rapes and murders an orphan child he is treating while she was unconscious from an operation. He raped her and killed her before she could ever wake up. Okay, so that's sort of simple. So the basic crime is the rape, which is the stealing of her dignity, because obviously she's not experiencing it, she's unconscious, and death. So he's denied her life and insulted the dignity of her body, unconscious body, which she'll never know about, so there's no harm in that sense. But there's just the harm I just expressed of emotionally, we all know that sense of violation, that we wouldn't want our corpse raped. We just wouldn't want it. We can't rationally explain how it's bad, we just don't like it. So I can't put that in the category of being a something. It's just one of those things we don't like. Anyway. She did not suffer at all, and since she had no relatives or friends, and no one grieved for her death. This doctor has previously eliminated the suffering of many people and performed many abortions. All right, so this is important. In here, obviously, the taking is explicitly him. Okay, nobody else took, he took. So when you're talking about this other side to the equation, you have to make it clear, okay, or I'm going to state it as a condition here, that these people who were aborted would not have been aborted if it wasn't for the existence of this doctor. They wouldn't have been able to go to some other doctor. If he didn't exist and perform the abortion for free, the abortion wouldn't have happened. So the baby would have been forced to be born. Okay, so that has to be the condition here, the second condition. So now we're trading two lives. Okay, the harm... See, this is another part of this that doesn't work in the sense that you're trading things that an antinatalist might say is a value, which is the prevention of the life. And the other side of the question, you're implying that something negative took place because the other girl her existence was terminated. To make this thought experiment coherent, okay, what you should have had was this doctor saved some other life that would have died if it wasn't for his intervention, right? So you would be trading things of consistent value to people who are going to look at this. I mean, in a sense, you're almost giving him double positives, right? And that doesn't work. So, I mean, so a way I would change this is to say that he was vital to, another 5-year-old surviving. Like she wouldn't if it wasn't for his intervention. If he didn't exist, she would have died. That would be a more sensible trade here. But I'll deal with your equation as long as we understand that the people he prevented from existing, if he didn't exist, these persons wouldn't have been aborted. They would have lived. And let's give them a life of something close to average or maybe less than average to give us a little bit of meaning. But let's say, yes, the person he prevented from existing, if they had existed, they would have had 2 bad relationships, marriages. One of the ex-husbands would have killed himself. This is realistic, right? Or let's say that one of the ex-husbands would have become an alcoholic because she was just such a bitch. She had 2 kids. One of them was a drug addict. One of them was a celebrity football player who, beat his wife. And then she died at 58. From complications from her third cancer surgery. She has breast cancer for 5 years, radiation chemo. So all of that doesn't happen because of this doctor. So all of that suffering of that mediocre, cruddy life doesn't take place because of what this doctor has done. And he's done many of these abortions apparently, so he saved lots of people, all this alcoholism and death from cancer. Anyway, therefore preventing a lot of harm that would have been fallen the being. So again, as long as it's explicitly understood, he prevented it. They couldn't have gone to another doctor. There was no other chance for the abortion. The abortion wouldn't have happened if he didn't exist. So let's understand that. He will keep being as productive if he can do the same to an orphan girl every few years. Right, so every few years he will kill a, whatever age you said it was, young kid, without their knowledge that they're going to be killed, and nobody knows about it, and it's just basically dying from the surgery, essentially. And he just makes the dying happen. Instead of it being an accident, he does it on purpose. But there's no grieving relatives or any of this other stuff. So if a kid died in surgery because the doctor had an accident, the tragedy is that the kid's life doesn't get fulfilled. But again, the argument is that's not necessarily having your life fulfilled is not necessarily a good thing. So at minimum, the person has been spared the average death. So the average $70,000 worth of medical care, hospital, tubes, all that crap. It didn't have to go through any of that. Anyway. No friends grieve for death. The doctor has previously eliminated the suffering of many people and performed many abortions. Yeah, I did that already. Okay, every few years. Why couldn't you just write this text in the comment section? I mean, what is this game you people play with your stupid text videos? It is really, really stupid. I mean, can't you just put an arrow pointing down and put the text where I can fucking goddamn read it instead of playing this stupid idiotic game? Alright, he will never make the orphan girl suffer in the process, having access to top-notch medical supply. He will also never suffer psychological anguish resulting from his actions. The doctor also donates large sums of money to non-profit humanitarian organizations and medical research. Well, I don't even know if that's a good thing, right? Because that's torturing animals. I don't even know how ethical the whole medical industry is. Again, I don't know whether medical science has done human beings all that much good. Frankly, I'd rather die in a week of pneumonia or the flu than have doctors do their experiments on me for 3 years, personally. So I don't know how to value that. You may choose to value that as you wish, but it's really not my thing. So let's just get to the end here so we can do the net figuring. You find out about his actions. You find out about his actions and can prove that he is guilty. Unless you do something, he will never get caught. Which action does the net commandment demand? Okay, so he's just asking me, will I stop him? According to inmendham's net principle, it would be very unethical to get this man arrested. It is a logical truth that the absolutely correct thing to do is to do nothing at all. Let's go further, finish this up. Well, we already know that we do have a social contract that does complicate questions like this. So I would be violating the social contract, a minor problem, I would concede, because I'm not going to get caught for violating it. But let's just make that clear, that that's part of this equation. I have to act, whether I don't act. By not acting, I'm acting. And my action is to violate the social contract, to be complicit with the doctor. He did not harm anyone. In fact, it was a costless procedure since the rape harmed no one. It was a net positive act since personal autonomy has no value and there was pleasure experienced. Well, I find the pleasure part of doubtful value, while there was no harm experienced. I mean, it'd be better if you made him psychotic and desperate, in the sense that if he didn't do the rape, he would be horribly miserable. But it doesn't matter. I don't need that to answer the question. It is worth noting, I don't know why you had to keep doing more of this, it is worth noting that Had she been conscious for a while before dying, the doctor's future contributions... Huh? Oh, see, and this is where you break it by having, you throw in this incoherent ending, and this is just going to mess everything up. It is worth noting that, had she been conscious for a while before dying, the doctor's future contributions would far exceed the amount of harm he would have done here. He would still have to do nothing if we knew for certain it would not happen often enough. So now you're changing your own thought experiment. Why would you do that? So now you're saying she is going to be conscious for part of the process of the rape or the killing. That doesn't help here. Because now, you're just adding something else to be calculated. I mean, it would have just been much better if you would have left it alone. But he was moral enough to do no harm at all. Well, see, you can't keep saying he did no harm at all and then say, had she been conscious. He did nothing wrong as per inmendham's net principle. Well, the fact that he did nothing wrong would be a silly thing to say. The argument is whether in net the result was positive or negative. Was the result positive or negative? I'm not claiming a statement about intent. He certainly had a shitty intent. He certainly is a shitty person. Okay, but you should just do the good stuff without taking at all. But the bottom line is, yeah, he's more productive than destructive. I mean, if I'm a drunk driver and I kill Jeffrey Dahmer when he's 14 years old and flee the scene of the crime, right? So no one ever knew I killed him. Everybody says a horrible thing happened. The horrible drunk killed the wonderful little 14-year-old kid. But we know that, no, now the horrible drunk just saved 7 people from being tortured and killed. Or 10 people, or 15, or however many he killed. So 15 teenagers were spared torture and death, and the humiliation of being raped when you're dead, and shoved in a barrel to rot. But, they're dead, so it's not, again, that's an emotional humiliation. It only has value as an imaginated thing, as something we imagine. So it's a cartoon, it's not a reality. I can imagine all kinds of stupid things in my head right now, like, a knife going in my eye. It doesn't mean a knife's going in my eye. It's not a real thing. It's a fake thing. And it stirs an emotion, but it's not a meaningful emotion. And again, we're talking about a circumstance where somebody doesn't even have that thought. I mean, if the original thought experiment, the girl is unconscious through the whole process, so I'd rather just leave it there. I mean, if I have to change it to her consciousness, that's a pretty horrifying moment to realize you're being raped and potentially murdered. So I don't know how long she's conscious for. I'm just saying that that was really stupid to add that in. So that just complicates the balance, the weighing. So again, what do we have? What are we trading off here? Right? So we have the prevented harm of the individuals who were aborted. So they didn't live their mediocre, depressive, suicidal even lives, whatever their life was, the fat, stupid, ignorant, dumb, tarded life. They didn't spend, 6 months dying, maybe longer, maybe shorter, but let's say the average is 6 months. And they didn't have the incursions of bad health or bad luck that happen to all people through this process of living to be any age at all. Like I said, to some people, they're going to value life. They're going to think life has purpose, so this thought experiment won't mean anything to them. You see how you kind of broke it by making it both negative things in the sense that they're traditionally negative things? You're comparing death with death and saying that somehow one death is good, the abortion, and one death is bad, the being denied life when you're 5 years old. So, I mean, if I could just, if we just go with traditional values, all right, and then we can understand the equation a little better. So again, if you argued that he had saved as many children as he killed, right, and he was vital to saving them, they would be dead if he didn't intervene. You know what I mean? Then it's quite obvious that, okay, I'm sorry, but yeah, the fact is, you don't have to like him, you don't have to like what he did, but the end result is that 5 people are alive that wouldn't be, 5 people are dead that should have been alive. Those two things wipe out, the life-death part, and all you're left with is the experiences, and well, the experiences of the dead is really good because they're dead with no harm. Right? I don't know how you can argue that. So, do I interfere? Well, I guess I don't. Right? I mean, if I know that this is going to be the end result is that I'm always going to know that something is being prevented, more harm is being prevented than is being caused. What's the argument? And again, it comes down to what you think the real value of a life is. I mean, we don't live to be 180 years old, right? Do we think do we sense any like horrible short change or something? You know, it's an arbitrary number. Whatever the number is, we're always going to say at the end that we don't want the end to happen. And the part in between, again, it's all desire that we're driven by. So, I don't think you've demonstrated how there's anything but emotionalism in this argument. You haven't demonstrated by, oh, here's the value that's been lost. You didn't say that any of these kids were exceptional, that any of them were going to necessarily do the world any good, to accomplish anything in particular besides just be a human being walking through the motions of their life. So by this argument, if some amount of life is missing from planet Earth, you know, we can always argue there's 7 billion people. Well, there could be 8 billion, so we're missing 1 billion. There's 1 billion people missing. I mean, we can contrive that and say, isn't that horrible? Does that make any sense to say, isn't that horrible? There's 1 billion humans that are dead that shouldn't be. They don't exist and they should be existing. They should be living lives. I mean, I'm just saying there's no rational reason to say that if you discontinue a life that was going nowhere in particular, that was vital in no functional way to the rest of the functioning of everybody else's lives, no one else would have been affected by their existence in a positive way. Nothing was, you know, they would have hurt just as many people as they helped, so to speak. So there was a net balance of nothing to their existence. How can I see that as any more valuable than the people we stop with a condom? Rationally. So all you're left with is an emotional argument that just has to do with the aesthetics of saying, I don't like the idea of my corpse being raped. Or, I think kittens are cute, and I think pigs are ugly. You're just left with emotionalism, subjective, bigoted, and prejudice as defining what's really valuable. And what I'm saying is what's really valuable is the conscious states experienced, and if you prevent as much harm as you create, well, that's a net zero. And if you prevent more harm, you win. And it doesn't matter whether you're a shithead or not. It doesn't matter if you win for purely selfish, negative reasons. It's just the fact of the matter. You're either productive or you're destructive. It doesn't matter what your intent is when you roll the dice. It doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, it's in the dice. It's in the roll. It's in what happens. What happens decides it. What the net effect is the net effect. That's just the way it is. I didn't make the rules. I'm just saying that's the truth of it. I would like a world where selfish people didn't do good things and be able to be rewarded for it. for just being selfish and lucky, but it's just the way the world works. I mean, like I said, this character could have been 10 times more productive if he didn't do the taking part, right? If he just did the giving part. So he clearly can be described as a scumbag for taking. But the truth is, he produced more good than he took. And that's all you have to do to be efficient. That's the definition of being efficient or productive, is producing more than you consume. So he satisfied his obligation. He produced more prevented harm than he consumed imposed harm. That's the premise you're arguing here. How could I possibly see that as rationally wrong? Yeah. Anyway. So I don't, like I said, all you're doing is playing an emotion. You're just preying on people's emotions. So that's the nature of your thought experiment. That's the nature of your philosophers. A bunch of bullshit emotionalism. Not any real serious dissection of reality. Just a superficial, trivial tripping over silly psychological rubbish. You know, stuff Freud could take care of in a snap of his finger. You know, I mean, Freud would have no problem dissecting this mush and just simply pointing out that what happens to your stupid corpse is irrelevant. I mean, that's psychological bullshit. That's just emotional crap. You can, the fact that it bothers you, you should acknowledge. You can certainly even wallow in it. You can certainly even be a slave to it. But admit what it is. Bullshit.